when we look at the upper extremity just from a straight up visceral pain referral pattern, what usually comes out is when it's right shoulder pain, we'll say pain, we're sticking with pain for right now, this current conversation. Right shoulder pain is almost always from the liver, always has a liver component to it. Left shoulder pain is often the stomach, spleen, or the heart. And the elbows typically don't have a visceral referral from a pain standpoint, like a visceral organ referral pain standpoint. And then the hand and wrist, or the wrist and hand, when it's the left wrist and hand, it's typically the heart. And when it is the right wrist and hand, it's typically the lung. Actually, I believe maybe the left hand could also be left lung as well as heart. But if you want to learn more about, I'm going to share more about it, but also it's good to share this book. This book is a great book. It's from Jean-Pierre Barral, and it's called Understanding the Messages of Your Joints for the Prevention and Care of Joint Pain. So this specifically, you can look up joint by joint and see what visceral organ refers to that area, or emotional type thing refers to that area. It's not like the most resourceful book in terms of like, here's what to do and how to treat it, but it is a good reference if you want to know these connections. Well, the reason why there are common visceral pain patterns is also part of the reason why the visceral pieces are going to come up when it comes to pain secondary to movement dysfunctions of the upper extremity as well. Because we look at the visceral organs and we look at the way they refer to the upper extremity, and it comes down to the nerves that innervate the nerves that innervate the visceral organs and their containers from a sensory standpoint. So these are going to be the organs that are innervated by the phrenic nerve and the vagus nerve. So specifically, the phrenic nerve, the right phrenic nerve especially, is a sensory nerve to the upper abdominal peritoneum, as well as in the mediastinum of the thoracic cavity and the pleura. So the phrenic nerve is going to be sensitized when there is an issue around the liver, around the gallbladder, around the duodenum, the pancreas, the stomach, and all of the area of those organs, right? So the upper peritoneum, so the ligaments between those organs, the hepatic duodenal ligament, the gastric hepatic ligaments, the gastric duodenal ligaments, the suspensory ligaments, holding the things into the diaphragm, the underneath of the diaphragm itself, right? That upper peritoneal area is one of the main sensory nerves, is the phrenic nerve. Another one of the sensory nerves, the more famous of the two of the nerves, is the vagus nerve. And so when there is something wrong with the organs, right? Either the organ is diseased or inflamed or not moving well or just not functioning well, the message gets relayed on the vagus nerve and on the phrenic nerve up to the brainstem and the cervical plexus. And then the cervical plexus, and specifically the phrenic nerve in this sense, shares nerve roots with the brachial plexus. That means that anything along the brachial plexus, which is the nerves that go to the upper extremity, can be affected. In addition to that, maybe more even common from a movement dysfunction standpoint, is the cervical plexus nerve and the nerve roots that the phrenic nerve comes from also give off this nerve called the nerve to the subclavius. The nerve to the subclavius is also the nerve that goes and innervates the SC joint. So not only does it innervate the subclavius muscle, which is the muscle beneath the clavicle, but it innervates the sternoclavicular joint. And the sternoclavicular joint is the joint that dictates movement of the entire upper extremity, because that is where we are connected, right? This joint is reflected in all the ranges of motion of the scapula. So in order for the scapula to elevate, depress, protract, retract, anterior tilt, posterior tilt, it needs to have good function of the SC joint. So if that joint is getting mixed messages from the influence from the phrenic nerve, from the viscera, then it's going to affect the motor control of the upper extremity. Why is this interesting too? Because when we look at the scapulothoracic joint, which is the, a false joint because it's not an actual bony articulation, but the dynamic interaction between the shoulder blade and the rib cage, which is what dictates where the arm bone and forearm and hand get placed in space, that motor control is very dependent on all of these good motor patterns and musculoskeletal balance of everything, as well as the movement of the SC joint. So oftentimes when we see scapulothoracic motion that is not good, right, or often called scapular dyskinesis, we blame the muscles. We say the muscles aren't strong, they're not turned on, or they're too active or underactive or inhibited or whatever, right? But oftentimes they're not able to do their job because the clavicle, specifically at the SC joint, is not able to move very well. Then when we get the fine-tuning motion of upward rotation and downward rotation, that motion is happening at the AC joint. But the AC joint is very dependent on what happens at the AC joint, right? So again, or the SC joint. So again, if our SC joint is not free to move and does not have a healthy message to it, then everything else down the chain falls apart. Especially too when we consider that a lot of the input to those muscles that control the scapulothoracic movement come from nerves that are part of the brachial plexus. So then we have kind of a double whammy from the influence of the viscera, is that maybe that means the SC joint is not moving very well because the subclavius is not moving, or just the joint itself is got a funky message. But then too, it shares nerve roots with the brachial plexus. So then the message to all of those terminal nerve branches at each level, because we're starting at the root level. So the roots, the trunks, the divisions, the cords, and the terminal branches are all affected by this message. And it's those terminal branches, or those branches that come off the roots or the trunks or the cords, that go to the 18 muscles that attach to the scapula. Those 18 muscles that attach to the scapula is what gives that fine-tuning balance of mobility and stability to the upper extremity. So then all of the theories of why someone might have shoulder pain due to poor scapulothoracic control, they're still true, but the way you go about treating them are different. You're not going to jump to smashing a muscle, dry needling a muscle, cupping a muscle, or strengthening with like traditional scapular stability exercises right out of the gate, because you see this cascade of how it's influenced by the other stuff going on in the body.